In the quiet hours after sunset, when the golden glow of the hearth fire cast long shadows across the wooden beams of a Norse longhouse, the Viking people prepared for what modern science now recognises as perhaps the most effective sleep in human history. While we in the 21st century struggle with insomnia, sleep disorders, and the constant glow of electronic devices, the Norse inhabitants of Scandinavia during the Viking Age, 793 to 1066 CE, experienced a relationship with sleep that was profoundly different and arguably superior to our own. The notion that people from a culture often characterized by raiding and warfare might have enjoyed exceptional sleep quality may seem counterintuitive. Yet the evidence suggests that the environmental conditions, cultural practices, and lifestyle factors of Viking Age Scandinavia created a perfect storm of circumstances conducive to restorative sleep. From the natural rhythms of their days to their sleeping environments, from their dietary habits to their philosophical approach to rest, the Norse people embodied sleep practices that modern sleep scientists now desperately recommend to their sleep-deprived patients. Archaeological findings from sites across Scandinavia, Iceland, and the Norse settlements in the British Isles, combined with literary evidence from the sagas and Eddas, reveal a culture whose sleep patterns were deeply attuned to natural cycles. Unlike our modern obsession with 8 consecutive hours of sleep, a relatively recent historical development, the Vikings embraced sleep patterns that worked in harmony with their environment, their bodies, and their cultural needs. This article explores the multifaceted reasons why Viking sleep practices may have been the most effective in human history. We will examine how their biphasic sleep patterns aligned with natural human rhythms, how their physical environments promoted better sleep, and how their cultural attitudes toward rest created healthier sleep hygiene than many subsequent civilizations achieved. By understanding the sleep practices of the Norse people, we gain not only historical insight, but potentially valuable lessons for improving our own troubled relationship with sleep in the modern world. As we journey through the sleeping habits of the Viking Age, we will meet characters like Thorvald the shipbuilder, whose winter sleep routine in his coastal Norwegian homestead reveals much about Norse sleep environments, and Astrid the healer, whose knowledge of sleep-inducing herbs was passed down through generations. Through these historically grounded examples, we can glimpse the lived experience of sleep during this fascinating period of human history. The evidence suggests a provocative conclusion. Despite their reputation as fierce warriors and explorers, the people of the Viking Age may have been among the most well-rested humans in history, a quality that perhaps contributed to their remarkable achievements in navigation, craftsmanship, and cultural expansion. As we shall see when it comes to sleep, we modern humans have much to learn from our Norse ancestors. The modern world's obsession with consolidated 8-hour sleep is a historical anomaly, a product of industrialization, artificial lighting, and rigid work schedules rather than human biology. Archaeological evidence and saga accounts suggest that the Vikings, like many pre-industrial societies, practiced what sleep historians call biphasic, or segmented sleep, a pattern that may have been far more aligned with our natural biological rhythms. The evidence for Viking biphasic sleep. The Old Norse language itself provides clues to this sleep pattern. The sagas frequently mention fyrsta svefn, first sleep, and references to waking in the middle of the night for various activities before returning to odia svefn, second sleep. While these terms don't appear consistently enough to form conclusive evidence alone, they align with what we know about pre-industrial sleep patterns across Europe. In the Grettis saga, the titular hero Grettir Asmundarson is described as rising after his first sleep to tend to household matters before returning to his bedding later in the night. Similarly, in Egil's saga, there are references to characters waking in the dead of night to conduct business or conversations before returning to sleep until dawn. Archaeological evidence from Viking settlements supports this textual evidence. Excavations at Jorvik, modern-day York in England, a significant Viking settlement, revealed household layouts conducive to nighttime activity. Fire pits in longhouses show evidence of being maintained throughout the night, suggesting regular waking periods. The natural pattern of Viking sleep. Based on this evidence and our understanding of pre-industrial sleep patterns, a typical Viking sleep schedule likely followed this pattern. After sunset, particularly during the long winter nights that dominate Scandinavian latitudes, the household would gather around the central hearth. As darkness fell completely, usually a few hours after sunset, they would retire for their first sleep. This might last approximately 4 hours, after which many would wake naturally. This midnight waking period, lasting perhaps 1 to 2 hours, was not considered insomnia or a sleep disorder as we might classify it today, but rather a normal and expected part of the night. During this time, Vikings might tend to the fire, check on livestock, engage in quiet conversation, perform religious rituals, or even visit neighbours. Consider Bjorn Haraldsson, a farmer from the Trondheim region of Norway. Archaeological evidence from similar farmsteads suggests that, after his evening meal, and perhaps some storytelling around the fire, Bjorn would retire to his sleeping platform as darkness fell completely, around 7 or 8 p.m. in winter. After sleeping deeply for about 4 hours, he might wake around midnight, add wood to the central hearth, check on his valuable livestock, perhaps drink some ale or water, and possibly discuss the next day's work with family members who were also awake. After an hour or so of such activities, he would return to his sleeping platform for his second sleep until dawn. The biological basis for biphasic sleep. Modern sleep science has begun to recognise that biphasic sleep may actually be more natural for humans than our modern consolidated sleep pattern. Research by historian A. Roger Ekirch, who documented hundreds of historical references to segmented sleep in pre-industrial Europe, suggests that this pattern was the norm throughout human history until artificial lighting changed our relationship with darkness. The human body naturally produces a surge of prolactin during the midnight waking period of biphasic sleep, a hormone associated with a sense of calm and well-being. Additionally, the natural circadian rhythm tends to include a period of heightened alertness a few hours after falling asleep, which aligns perfectly with the biphasic pattern. For Vikings living at northern latitudes, biphasic sleep would have been particularly adaptive. During winter, when darkness could last 16 to 20 hours, in parts of Scandinavia, attempting to sleep continuously for such long periods would have been biologically impractical. The midnight waking period broke the long dark hours into manageable segments while allowing necessary tasks to be completed. Seasonal variations in Viking sleep. The extreme seasonal variations in daylight at northern latitudes would have created significant seasonal differences in Viking sleep patterns. During summer, when daylight could last 20 hours or more in parts of Scandinavia, sleep would necessarily be compressed into shorter periods. The sagas occasionally mention the difficulty of sleep during the nightless nights of midsummer. The Havamal, a collection of Old Norse poems from the Poetic Edda, contains wisdom about moderation in sleep. The unwise man is awake all night, worrying about everything. When morning comes, he is tired, and all his troubles are just as they were. This suggests an awareness that sleep needed to be properly managed according to seasonal changes and personal needs. During winter, the pattern would shift dramatically. With darkness dominating the day, sleep would expand, though still likely in the biphasic pattern. Archaeological evidence from winter dwellings shows they were designed to maximise warmth and minimise fuel use during these long nights, creating perfect conditions for extended periods of rest. The midnight activities, what Vikings did between sleeps. The midnight waking period in Viking households was a time of quiet productivity and social connection. The sagas mention various activities conducted during this time. Craftwork. The making and repair of tools, spinning, and other quiet handcrafts were well suited to the midnight hours by firelight. Archaeological evidence from Viking settlements shows numerous small craft items that could have been produced during these quiet hours. Religious practices. Some scholars believe that certain religious rituals may have been performed during the midnight hours. The liminal nature of the midnight period between one day and the next had spiritual significance in many pre-Christian traditions. Storytelling and knowledge transmission. The sagas themselves may have been transmitted during these quiet midnight hours, when the mind was in a receptive, reflective state, and the household was gathered in intimate proximity. Sexual relations. The privacy afforded by darkness and the relaxed state between sleep periods made this a natural time for intimacy between couples. Security. In more turbulent times, the midnight waking period allowed for checking defences and changing guards, ensuring continuous protection. Take the example of Gudrun, a weaver from a settlement near modern-day Roskilde in Denmark. Archaeological evidence from similar households suggests that during her midnight waking period, she might use the quiet hours to spin thread by the light of the hearth fire, a task requiring focus but not bright light. This productive use of what would otherwise be wasted time in bed allowed her to maximise both her rest and her productivity. The transition to consolidated sleep. The biphasic sleep pattern of the Vikings began to disappear across Europe in the centuries following the Viking Age, particularly with the spread of artificial lighting and the regimentation of time that came with industrialisation. By forcing sleep into a single consolidated block, modern humans may have lost touch with a more natural rhythm that served our ancestors well for millennia. The Vikings' biphasic sleep pattern represents not a primitive or less advanced approach to sleep, but rather a more natural alignment with human biology and environmental conditions. Their segmented sleep, adapted to the extreme seasonal variations of northern latitudes, likely provided more restorative rest than our modern insistence on 8 consecutive hours, a pattern that often leads to sleep anxiety and insomnia when it cannot be achieved. Perhaps no factor contributed more significantly to the quality of Viking sleep than their relationship with darkness, a relationship fundamentally different from our modern experience. In an age before artificial lighting transformed human sleep patterns, the Norse people lived in harmony with natural light cycles, and this synchronization with nature's rhythms profoundly affected their sleep quality. The darkness of the North. The geographic location of Viking settlements, primarily in Scandinavia, with expansions into Iceland, Greenland, and parts of the British Isles, placed them in regions characterised by dramatic seasonal variations in daylight. During winter months, darkness dominated, with some northern regions experiencing only a few hours of dim daylight. In summer, the situation reversed, with the famous midnight sun providing nearly constant illumination in the northernmost settlements. Archaeological evidence from Viking dwellings reveals how they adapted to these extreme conditions. Longhouses and smaller dwellings typically had few, if any, windows. Those that existed were small and could be covered with translucent materials like animal membrane or oiled cloth, or simply blocked with shutters. The primary source of light and heat was the central hearth, whose fire would be banked low during sleeping hours. This created an environment of profound darkness during sleeping periods, a darkness far more complete than most modern humans ever experience. Even on clear moonlit nights, the interior of Viking dwellings would have been characterised by a darkness that modern sleep researchers now recognise as optimal for human sleep. The biological impact of true darkness. Modern sleep science has identified the critical importance of darkness for quality sleep. Darkness triggers the production of melatonin, the hormone that regulates sleep-wake cycles. Without sufficient darkness, melatonin production is suppressed, leading to difficulty falling asleep, reduced sleep quality, and potential long-term health consequences. The Vikings, living without artificial light, would have experienced melatonin production patterns closely aligned with natural sunset and sunrise. During winter months, this would have meant elevated melatonin levels for extended periods, creating ideal conditions for deep, restorative sleep. Consider Leif, a fisherman living on the Norwegian coast near modern-day Bergen. Archaeological evidence from similar coastal settlements suggests that his winter sleep environment would have been characterised by nearly complete darkness from mid-afternoon until late morning. With only the dim glow of banked coals in the hearth providing minimal illumination, his pineal gland would have produced melatonin at optimal levels for 12 to 16 hours each day during winter months. A study published in the Journal of Sleep Research found that when modern subjects were exposed to natural light cycles without artificial lighting for just 1 week, their sleep patterns rapidly synchronized with sunset and sunrise, and melatonin production increased by 30%. The Vikings lived their entire lives in such conditions, suggesting they likely experienced consistently optimal melatonin production. The Vikings were not, of course, without any form of artificial light. They used fires, oil lamps, and candles made from tallow or beeswax. However, these light sources differed fundamentally from modern lighting in ways that preserved sleep quality. First, these light sources produced primarily yellow-red spectrum light, rather than the blue spectrum light that most severely suppresses melatonin production. Modern research has shown that exposure to blue light, common in LEDs and screens, in the evening can delay melatonin production by up to 3 hours. The warm spectrum light of Viking fires and candles would have had minimal impact on their circadian rhythms. Second, these light sources were relatively dim. Archaeological experiments with reconstructed Viking oil lamps and candles suggest they produced between 5 to 20 lumens of light, compared to a modern LED bulb's 800 to 1,500 lumens. This low light level would have been insufficient to significantly suppress melatonin production. Third, artificial light was used sparingly due to the effort and resources required to produce it. Candles and oil for lamps were relatively expensive in terms of labour and materials. The sagas occasionally mention the careful use of lighting resources, suggesting that artificial light was used judiciously rather than wastefully. The Havamal contains wisdom that could be interpreted as addressing the importance of darkness for sleep. The wise guest has his ways when he comes to the feast, silent attention and thought. This could suggest the value placed on quiet, darkened environments for restoration. The extreme seasonal variations in daylight at northern latitudes presented unique challenges for sleep regulation. During the winter months, the abundance of darkness made obtaining sufficient sleep relatively straightforward. However, the summer months, with their extended daylight, required cultural adaptations. Archaeological evidence from Viking settlements shows the use of thick curtains or hangings that could be used to create artificial darkness during summer sleeping periods. These were typically made of heavy wool, which would have been effective at blocking the midnight sun. In Iceland, some dwellings show evidence of sleeping areas built into the thickest parts of the turf walls, creating naturally darkened sleeping spaces, regardless of external light conditions. The sagas mention the use of specific sleeping arrangements during summer months. In Egil's saga, there are references to sleeping chambers being arranged to minimise light exposure. This suggests a cultural awareness of the importance of darkness for sleep quality, even during periods when natural darkness was scarce. The Vikings' relationship with natural light cycles extended beyond the simple day-night dichotomy. Evidence suggests they were acutely aware of lunar cycles and their potential impact on sleep. The Old Norse calendar was primarily lunar, and several surviving artifacts show detailed tracking of lunar phases. Full moon nights, which provide significantly more illumination than moonless nights, are occasionally mentioned in the sagas in connection with difficulty sleeping or increased activity. Snorri Sturluson, in the prose Edda, references the moon's influence on natural cycles, suggesting an awareness of its potential impact on human rhythms as well. Modern research has confirmed that lunar cycles can indeed influence human sleep, with studies showing that people take longer to fall asleep and experience reduced deep sleep during full moon phases, even when they cannot see the moon. The Vikings' awareness of these natural cycles likely led to behavioural adaptations. Archaeological evidence from several settlements suggests that certain activities were planned according to lunar phases, potentially including adjustments to sleep timing and duration. The sleep-friendly relationship with darkness that characterised the Viking Age began to change in the centuries that followed. The increased use of candles, the development of better oil lamps, and eventually gaslighting and electric light progressively eroded the natural darkness that had supported human sleep for millennia. By the Industrial Revolution, artificial light had dramatically altered human sleep patterns across much of Europe. The invention of the electric light bulb in the late 19th century accelerated this change, creating environments where true darkness became increasingly rare. Today, light pollution affects more than 80% of the world's population, and many people never experience the kind of complete darkness that was normal for the Vikings. This constant exposure to artificial light, particularly blue spectrum light in the evening hours, has been linked to widespread sleep disorders and related health problems. The Vikings' embrace of natural darkness, both by necessity and through cultural adaptations, likely contributed significantly to sleep quality superior to that experienced by most modern humans. Their sleep environments, characterized by profound darkness during sleeping hours, would have supported optimal melatonin production and natural circadian rhythms, creating conditions for deep, restorative sleep that many of us can only imagine. One of the most striking differences between Viking sleep practices and our modern approach lies in the fundamentally communal nature of sleep during the Norse era. While contemporary Western culture prizes private bedrooms and individual sleeping arrangements, archaeological evidence and saga accounts reveal that Vikings typically slept in shared spaces, an arrangement that likely enhanced both their physical security and psychological well-being. Archaeological excavations of Viking dwellings across Scandinavia, Iceland, and Norse settlements in Scotland and Ireland reveal consistent patterns in sleeping arrangements. The typical Viking longhouse featured a central hearth with sleeping platforms or benches running along the walls. These platforms, often raised and built into the structure of the building, were shared sleeping spaces rather than private rooms. At Stung, a remarkably well-preserved Viking-age farmstead in Iceland, archaeologists have uncovered clear evidence of communal sleeping arrangements. The main longhouse featured raised platforms along both long walls that served as seating during the day and sleeping areas at night. Similar arrangements have been found at sites ranging from Jorvik, York, in England, to Lance aux Meadows in Newfoundland, suggesting this was a consistent pattern across the Viking world. The sleeping platforms were typically constructed of wood and would have been covered with straw, wool, and furs for comfort. Archaeological evidence suggests that these platforms were not divided into individual sleeping spaces, but were continuous, with entire households sharing the same sleeping area. Based on archaeological findings and saga accounts, we can reconstruct typical sleeping arrangements in Viking households. The master of the household and his wife typically occupied the most favourable position on the sleeping platform, usually the section nearest the central hearth for warmth, and often slightly elevated or separated by subtle architectural features to denote status. Children, unmarried relatives and servants would occupy other sections of the same sleeping platform, arranged according to status and practical considerations. In larger households, there might be sleeping platforms on both sides of the longhouse, with the household head's family on one side and lower status members on the other. Consider the household of Gunnar Hammundarson, a wealthy farmer from southern Iceland whose homestead has been partially excavated. Archaeological evidence suggests his longhouse measured approximately 20 metres by 5.5 metres, with sleeping platforms running along both long walls. Gunnar, his wife Hallgerda, and their youngest children would have slept on the most favourable section of the platform, while older children, relatives and workers occupied other sections. During particularly cold winter nights, the entire household, perhaps 15 to 20 people, would have slept in the same space, their body heat contributing to the warmth of the building. This communal sleeping arrangement provided significant security benefits in an age when physical safety could not be taken for granted. With multiple people sleeping in the same space, there was always someone likely to wake if danger threatened. The sagas contain numerous accounts of households being alerted to danger by someone waking during the night, a natural security system embedded in their sleeping arrangements. In Njal's saga, when enemies approach Gunnar's farm at night intending harm, they are detected because someone in the household hears them outside and raises the alarm. This pattern appears repeatedly in the sagas, the communal sleeping arrangement functioning as an effective early warning system. For travellers, communal sleeping provided similar security. The Havamal advises travellers to remain vigilant. Let a man never sleep in the house of a stranger. Many a man who appears harmless proves harmful when night comes. The poem goes on to suggest that sleeping with one's weapons close at hand is wise practice. In communal sleeping situations, travellers would be surrounded by others, reducing vulnerability. Beyond the practical security benefits, modern sleep science suggests that communal sleep arrangements may have provided significant psychological benefits that enhanced sleep quality. Humans are inherently social creatures, and the sense of security that comes from sleeping in the presence of trusted others can profoundly impact sleep quality. Research published in the journal Sleep Health has found that people who report stronger social connections and social support tend to experience better sleep quality. The physical proximity of trusted others during sleep appears to reduce vigilance and anxiety, allowing for deeper, more restorative sleep. For Viking children, sleeping alongside family members would have provided a sense of security that modern sleep researchers recognise as crucial for healthy sleep development. Studies of traditional cultures that practice co-sleeping have found that children in these arrangements often experience fewer sleep disturbances and develop healthy sleep associations. The saga literature occasionally references the comfort derived from communal sleeping. In Grettir's saga, the protagonist, who spends much time in isolation due to his outlaw status, specifically mentions missing the security of sleeping among household members. This suggests a cultural recognition of the psychological benefits of communal sleep. The communal nature of Viking sleeping arrangements raises obvious questions about privacy, particularly for intimate relations between couples. Archaeological and literary evidence suggests several adaptations that address these concerns. Some excavated Viking dwellings show evidence of curtains or dividers that could be used to create semi-private areas within the communal sleeping space. At the Coppergate excavations in York, archaeologists discovered remnants of textile dividers that appear to have been used to section off portions of sleeping platforms. The sagas occasionally mention closed beds or bed closets, box-like structures that could provide privacy within the larger communal space. These appear to have been primarily used by the head of the household and his wife, representing both a status symbol and a practical solution to privacy needs. Additionally, the biphasic sleep pattern discussed earlier created natural opportunities for intimacy during the midnight waking period, when some household members might be engaged in activities away from the sleeping area. While Viking sleep was fundamentally communal, archaeological evidence reveals subtle status distinctions within sleeping arrangements. Higher status individuals typically occupied the warmest, most comfortable sections of sleeping platforms, usually those closest to the central hearth. In some excavated longhouses, the head of the household's sleeping area featured slightly better construction, additional furs, or small architectural distinctions. At Borg in Lofoten, Norway, archaeologists uncovered a large chieftain's longhouse with clear evidence of status differentiation in sleeping arrangements. The high-status sleeping area was slightly elevated and featured remnants of higher quality bedding materials than other sections. These status distinctions within communal sleeping arrangements reflect the hierarchical yet interconnected nature of Viking society, maintaining social order while preserving the security and psychological benefits of sleeping in proximity to others. The intensity of communal sleeping likely varied seasonally in the Viking world. During the harsh northern winters, practical considerations of warmth would have encouraged closer sleeping arrangements, with body heat serving as a valuable resource for survival. Archaeological evidence from several sites suggests that winter dwellings were often smaller and more heavily insulated than summer structures, creating more intimate sleeping conditions during cold months. In contrast, during summer months with milder temperatures, sleeping arrangements may have been more dispersed, with some household members possibly sleeping in outbuildings or even outdoors. This seasonal variation would have created a rhythm of social closeness and distance throughout the year, potentially contributing to social cohesion, while preventing the conflicts that might arise from constant close proximity. The communal sleeping arrangements that characterised the Viking Age began to change in the centuries that followed. With the introduction of Christianity and increasing influence from continental European practices, architectural styles gradually shifted toward more compartmentalised living spaces. By the late medieval period, homes of wealthy Scandinavians began to feature separate sleeping chambers, at least for high-status individuals. This trend continued and accelerated through the Renaissance and into the modern era, eventually resulting in our contemporary emphasis on private bedrooms. This transition from communal to private sleep represents one of the most significant but least discussed changes in human sleep behaviour over the past millennium. The Vikings' communal sleep practices, which had evolved over thousands of years to enhance both security and psychological well-being, were gradually replaced by sleeping arrangements that prioritised privacy and individual space, often at the expense of the social connection that had characterised sleep throughout most of human history. The evidence suggests that the communal nature of Viking sleep likely contributed significantly to its quality. By sleeping in the presence of trusted others, Vikings would have experienced enhanced security and psychological comfort that modern sleep science recognises as conducive to deep, restorative sleep. Their communal sleeping arrangements represented not a primitive necessity to be overcome, but rather a sophisticated adaptation that supported optimal sleep in their historical context. The physical sleep environment of the Viking Age differed dramatically from our modern bedroom settings, yet archaeological evidence suggests that Norse sleeping arrangements may have provided superior ergonomic support and healthier sleeping conditions than many contemporary mattresses. The Viking bed, consisting primarily of natural materials gathered from their local environments, created a sleep surface that modern sleep science increasingly recognises as beneficial for proper spinal alignment and temperature regulation. Archaeological excavations across the Viking world reveal consistent patterns in the construction of sleeping surfaces. The foundation typically consisted of raised wooden platforms built along the walls of longhouses. These platforms, constructed of split logs or planks, were generally 40 to 60 centimetres high and 1.5 to 2 metres wide, dimensions that allowed them to serve as seating during the day and sleeping areas at night. At the Firkat settlement in Denmark, archaeologists uncovered well-preserved sleeping platforms with evidence of careful construction. The wooden base was slightly angled toward the wall, creating a subtle incline that would have positioned sleepers' heads slightly higher than their feet, a configuration that modern sleep research suggests can improve circulation and reduce acid reflux during sleep. Similar platforms have been found at Viking settlements from Dublin to the Faroe Islands, suggesting this was a standard architectural feature across Norse culture. The wooden platform itself provided a stable, level foundation that prevented sleepers from coming into direct contact with the often damp ground, an important consideration in the humid northern climate. Upon these wooden platforms, Vikings created layered bedding using entirely natural materials. Archaeological evidence, combined with references in the sagas, suggests a typical arrangement of layers that provided both comfort and insulation. The base layer typically consisted of locally harvested straw or hay. At several archaeological sites, including settlements in Iceland and Greenland, preserved remnants of these straw mattresses have been recovered. Analysis of these remains reveals that the straw was typically changed seasonally and was often selected for softness, with certain types of grass apparently preferred. Straw, while seemingly primitive compared to modern mattresses, offers several advantages as a sleeping surface. It provides natural spring and flexibility, conforming somewhat to the body while still offering support. Modern ergonomic research suggests that moderately firm, responsive surfaces like this may be optimal for spinal alignment during sleep. Additionally, straw allows air circulation, preventing the heat buildup that can occur with solid mattresses. This breathability would have helped regulate sleeping temperature, a factor that sleep scientists now recognise as crucial for quality sleep. The Norse practice of regularly replacing the straw would have also reduced dust mites and other allergens that can accumulate in modern mattresses. Above the straw foundation, archaeological evidence suggests layers of woolen materials were typically added. Textile fragments recovered from Viking burial sites and settlements indicate that coarse woolen blankets were common possessions, even in relatively modest households. Experimental archaeology, where researchers create and use replicas of Viking bedding, has demonstrated that these woolen layers provided excellent insulation properties. Wool retains its insulating capacity even when damp, a crucial advantage in the often humid Norse environment. Additionally, wool's natural lanolin content makes it somewhat water-resistant and inhibits bacterial growth, contributing to a healthier sleeping environment. The sagas occasionally mention abreda, coverings, made of wadmal, a coarse woolen cloth that was a staple of Viking textile production. These would have been placed over the straw layer to provide additional comfort and to prevent the straw from poking through. For those who could afford them, animal furs and skins formed the top layer of Viking bedding. Archaeological evidence from higher status burials and settlements reveals the use of bear, wolf, fox and sheep skins as prized bedding materials. At the Oseberg ship burial, which contained the remains of a high-status woman from 9th century Norway, multiple animal hides were found, suggesting their importance as status symbols and practical bedding. Similarly, the 10th century Mammon burial in Denmark contained fragments of bear fur that appears to have been used as bedding. Furs provided superior insulation and a soft sleeping surface. Modern sleep researchers have found that natural fur and wool can help regulate body temperature during sleep by wicking away moisture while providing insulation, creating what sleep scientists call a microclimate that remains relatively stable throughout the night. Consider Astrid, the wife of a prosperous farmer near what is now Trondheim, Norway. Archaeological evidence from similar households suggests her sleeping area would have consisted of a wooden platform covered first with fresh rye straw, changed seasonally, then a layer of coarse woolen cloth, and finally, as befitting her status, several sheepskins and perhaps a bearskin. This arrangement would have provided excellent insulation against the cold Norwegian nights, while offering ergonomic support similar to what modern orthopedic mattresses attempt to achieve. Modern sleep science increasingly suggests that the firm but responsive support provided by traditional bedding materials may be superior for spinal health compared to many modern mattresses. Research published in the Journal of Chiropractic Medicine has found that medium-firm, natural sleeping surfaces often provide better support for the natural curvature of the spine than very soft mattresses, which can allow the spine to sag into misalignment. The layered approach of Viking bedding created a surface that was firm enough to support proper alignment while still conforming somewhat to body contours. This combination, which high-end modern mattress companies now attempt to recreate with advanced materials, came naturally from the Vikings' use of straw, wool, and furs in combination. Additionally, the Viking practice of sleeping slightly inclined, with the head end of the platform often slightly higher, aligns with modern recommendations for those suffering from acid reflux or certain respiratory conditions. This natural incline would have facilitated easier breathing during sleep. One of the most significant advantages of Viking bedding materials was their superior temperature regulation, compared to many modern alternatives. Sleep scientists now recognise that maintaining an optimal body temperature is crucial for quality sleep, particularly for achieving and maintaining deep sleep phases. The natural materials used in Viking bedding, straw, wool and fur, all possess excellent temperature regulating properties. They provide insulation when needed, while allowing excess heat and moisture to dissipate. Modern synthetic materials often trap heat and moisture, leading to sleep disruptions when the body overheats during the night. Archaeological evidence suggests that Vikings adjusted their bedding seasonally. Excavations at several sites show different compositions of bedding materials in structures identified as summer versus winter dwellings. This seasonal adaptation would have further enhanced temperature regulation throughout the year. The Viking approach to head support during sleep also differs from our modern expectation of soft, fluffy pillows. Archaeological evidence suggests that headrests were typically firm, often consisting of a small leather or wool cushion stuffed with feathers, wool, or even moss. At the Coppergate excavations in York, archaeologists discovered a leather cushion that appears to have served as a pillow. Similar finds from other Viking settlements suggest that these headrests were relatively firm by modern standards. Interestingly, modern research on sleep posture suggests that firmer head support may be better for spinal alignment than the very soft pillows common today. Studies have found that overly soft pillows can contribute to neck pain and poor sleep posture, while moderately firm support better maintains proper alignment of the cervical spine during sleep. As discussed in the previous section on communal sleep, Viking sleeping platforms were typically shared among multiple people. This arrangement had implications for the physical sleeping experience beyond the social aspects previously explored. Shared sleeping surfaces distribute weight differently than individual beds, creating natural depressions and support patterns that can actually enhance comfort. Modern sleep researchers studying traditional cultures have noted that shared sleeping surfaces often create natural nests that support the body's contours. Additionally, in the cold northern climate, shared body heat would have been a significant advantage, reducing the need for excessive layers of bedding that might restrict movement during sleep. The natural bedding materials that characterised the Viking Age remained common throughout much of Europe until relatively recently. The transition to raised bedsteads with stuffed mattresses began among the elite during the medieval period, but didn't reach common households until much later. By the 19th century, straw mattresses were being replaced by cotton and horsehair models, and by the mid-20th century, synthetic materials had largely replaced natural fibres in most Western bedding. This transition, while perceived as progress, may have sacrificed some of the ergonomic and temperature-regulating benefits of traditional bedding. Recent trends in natural and organic bedding represent, in some ways, a return to principles that would have been familiar to the Vikings. The increasing popularity of wool mattress toppers, natural latex, and even straw-filled mattresses, now marketed as high-end orthopedic options, suggests a rediscovery of the benefits that Viking sleepers took for granted. The Viking bed, with its combination of firm support, natural temperature regulation, and regularly refreshed materials, likely provided an excellent foundation for quality sleep. While lacking the plushness we associate with luxury bedding today, the Norse sleeping surface offered ergonomic benefits that many modern mattresses attempt to recreate with advanced technology and materials, a testament to the sophisticated practicality of Viking sleep arrangements. While the Vikings are often remembered for their martial prowess and seafaring adventures, archaeological and literary evidence reveals a sophisticated understanding of medicinal plants, including those used to promote sleep and treat sleep disorders. The Norse pharmacopoeia included numerous herbs that modern science has confirmed possess sedative, anxiolytic, and sleep-enhancing properties. These natural sleep aids, combined with the environmental factors previously discussed, likely contributed significantly to the quality of Viking sleep. Archaeological excavations at Viking settlements have yielded substantial evidence of medicinal herb use. Pollen analysis from middens refuse heaps, and from residues in cooking vessels reveals the presence of numerous plants known for their sedative properties. At Jorvik, York, archaeologists discovered preserved seeds and plant remains including valerian, Valeriana officinalis, hops, Humulus lupulus, and linden, Tilia species, all plants with documented sleep-promoting properties. Similar findings have emerged from excavations in Dublin, Hedeby, and various Scandinavian sites, suggesting widespread knowledge of these plants' properties. Particularly telling are finds from what appear to be healers' or herbalists' dwellings. At a 10th century settlement near Kaupang, Norway, archaeologists uncovered a building containing numerous preserved plant materials and specialised containers, suggesting it may have belonged to someone specialising in herbal medicine. Among the identified plants were several with sedative properties. literary evidence, the sagas and medicinal texts. While the sagas rarely focus specifically on medicinal practices, they contain occasional references to sleep-inducing herbs and preparations. In Egil's saga, there is mention of a drink prepared to help an ailing person sleep, while other sagas contain passing references to herbal treatments for various ailments, including sleep difficulties. More detailed information comes from slightly later medieval Scandinavian medical texts that likely preserved older knowledge. The 13th century Harpestrang Lægebog, Henrik Harpestrang's medical book, written in Denmark but drawing on older traditions, contains numerous references to herbs used for sleep, including detailed instructions for their preparation and use. These sources, combined with the broader European medical tradition that Vikings would have encountered in their travels, suggest a well-developed understanding of sleep-promoting herbs. The Viking sleep pharmacopoeia. Based on archaeological findings and historical texts, we can identify several key herbs that would have been used to promote sleep in the Viking Age. Valerian, Valeriana officinalis. Archaeological evidence confirms the Vikings cultivated and used valerian, a plant native to Europe with powerful sedative properties. Modern research has validated valerian's effectiveness, with studies showing it reduces sleep latency, the time it takes to fall asleep, and improves sleep quality. Valerian root contains valerianic acid, which affects GABA receptors in the brain similar to modern benzodiazepines, but without the same risk of dependency. Hops, Humulus lupulus. While best known today as a beer ingredient, hops have a long history as a sedative. Archaeological evidence confirms Viking-era use of hops, both in brewing and medicinal preparations. Hops contain methylbutanol, which has demonstrated sedative effects. Modern studies have shown that hops, particularly when combined with valerian, can significantly improve sleep quality. Linden or lime flowers, Tilia species. Pollen and plant remains from Viking settlements confirm the use of linden, which contains flavonoids with mild sedative and anxiolytic properties. Linden tea remains a popular sleep aid in modern Scandinavian folk medicine. Chamomile, Matricaria chamomilla. Archaeological evidence suggests chamomile was known and used medicinally by Vikings. Its mild sedative effects come from apigenin, a flavonoid that binds to benzodiazepine receptors in the brain. Modern studies have confirmed chamomile's effectiveness for improving sleep quality. Lavender, Lavandula angustifolia. While not native to Scandinavia, lavender was likely encountered by Vikings in their travels and possibly cultivated in some settlements. Archaeological evidence from Viking trading centres shows lavender was among the imported medicinal herbs. Modern research has demonstrated that lavender's scent alone can improve sleep quality by decreasing heart rate and blood pressure. Passion flower, Passiflora incarnata. Although this is more speculative, there is some evidence suggesting Vikings who reached North America may have encountered and brought back passion flower, which Native Americans used as a sedative. If so, this would have been a valuable addition to their sleep pharmacopoeia, as passion flower contains chrysin, a compound with anxiolytic effects. Archaeological and literary evidence suggests several methods by which Vikings prepared and administered these sleep-promoting herbs. Infusions and decoctions. The most common preparation was likely herbal teas. Archaeological finds include specialised vessels that appear designed for brewing herbal preparations. The sagas occasionally mention medicinal drinks, and later Nordic medical texts provide specific instructions for preparing herbal infusions. Alcoholic extractions. Vikings were skilled brewers, and evidence suggests they created medicinal alcoholic preparations similar to modern tinctures. Alcohol effectively extracts many of the active compounds in sedative herbs and would have enhanced their absorption. Smoke inhalation. Some herbs, particularly hops and lavender, may have been added to fires for their aromatic properties. Archaeological evidence from several sites shows specialised containers that may have been used for burning aromatic substances. Herbal pillows. Later Nordic folk medicine includes the tradition of herbal pillows stuffed with sedative herbs. While direct archaeological evidence of this practice from the Viking Age is lacking, it represents a plausible use of these plants. The use of medicinal herbs in Viking culture likely had both practical and ritualistic dimensions. These sagas suggest that healing was often associated with magical or spiritual practices, and the administration of herbal remedies probably incorporated elements of ritual. Archaeological evidence from several sites shows what appear to be ritualistic arrangements of herbs and specialised containers, in context suggesting medicinal use. This suggests that the effectiveness of herbal sleep aids may have been enhanced by the psychological impact of ritual administration, what modern medicine would recognise as a placebo effect supplementing the herb's pharmacological properties. Consider Thora, a healer from a settlement near modern-day Roskilde in Denmark. Archaeological evidence from similar contexts suggests she would have maintained a garden of medicinal herbs, including valerian and chamomile. For a person suffering from sleep difficulties, she might prepare a strong decoction of valerian root, enhanced with hops and sweetened with honey. This would be administered in the evening, perhaps accompanied by specific incantations or rituals that enhanced its perceived effectiveness. The combination of the herb's genuine pharmacological properties and the psychological impact of their ritual administration would likely have produced significant improvements in sleep quality. Seasonal variations in herbal sleep aids. The extreme seasonal variations in daylight at northern latitudes would have necessitated different approaches to sleep aids throughout the year. Archaeological and literary evidence suggests awareness of this need. During the long winter nights when obtaining sufficient sleep was less problematic, milder herbs like chamomile and linden might have been preferred. During summer, with its extended daylight, stronger sedatives like valerian and hops would have been more valuable for inducing sleep despite the ambient light. Some archaeological evidence suggests seasonal harvesting patterns for different medicinal herbs, with some collected and dried in larger quantities at specific times of year, suggesting awareness of their optimal potency cycles. An important consideration when comparing Viking herbal sleep aids to modern pharmaceutical alternatives is their relative safety profile. Modern sleeping medications, while effective, often carry risks of dependency, tolerance, and side effects. The herbal remedies used by Vikings generally have much milder side effect profiles and lower risks of dependency. Modern research has confirmed that herbs like valerian, hops, and chamomile can improve sleep quality without the risks associated with many prescription sleep aids. While less potent than modern pharmaceuticals, their gentler action may actually have been advantageous for regular use, allowing Vikings to enhance sleep quality without developing tolerance or dependency. Additionally, the Vikings' apparent practice of using different herbs, seasonally and in varying combinations, would have further reduced the risk of developing tolerance to any particular remedy. Perhaps the most significant advantage of the Viking approach to sleep aids was their integration into a holistic sleep environment. Unlike modern sleep medications, which often attempt to force sleep in environments and schedules hostile to natural sleep patterns, Viking herbal remedies worked in concert with their natural light exposure, physical activity patterns, and sleep environment. This integrated approach likely enhanced the effectiveness of their herbal sleep aids. Modern sleep research has shown that the same sleep aid can have dramatically different effects depending on whether it's used in conjunction with good sleep hygiene practices or in isolation. The Vikings' use of herbal sleep remedies within a lifestyle already conducive to good sleep would have maximised their effectiveness while minimising any potential drawbacks, a sophisticated approach that anticipated modern integrative medicine by a millennium. The archaeological and literary evidence suggests that Vikings possessed a nuanced understanding of sleep-promoting herbs that modern science has largely validated. Their herbal sleep aids, used within the context of lifestyle and environmental factors already conducive to good sleep, likely contributed significantly to sleep quality superior to that experienced by many modern humans relying on pharmaceutical interventions within sleep-hostile environments. The relationship between diet and sleep quality is increasingly recognised by modern sleep science, yet it represents an area where Viking practices may have inadvertently created near-optimal conditions for restorative sleep. Archaeological evidence combined with literary sources and our understanding of Norse food culture suggests that Viking dietary patterns supported healthy sleep through their timing, composition, and preparation methods. Archaeological evidence and saga accounts indicate that Vikings typically followed a meal pattern significantly different from modern eating habits. Their primary meal, called dagverja, day meal, or undawn in some regions, was consumed in the mid-morning after several hours of activity. A second substantial meal, nattverda, night meal, was eaten in the late afternoon or early evening, well before bedtime. This pattern meant that Vikings typically finished their last substantial meal several hours before sleep, a practice that modern sleep research has shown significantly improves sleep quality. Studies published in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine have demonstrated that eating close to bedtime, particularly consuming heavy or high-fat meals, can disrupt sleep architecture by delaying the onset of REM sleep and reducing sleep efficiency. The timing of Viking meals appears to have been primarily dictated by practical considerations, particularly the availability of daylight for work and the need to prepare and consume food during visible hours. However, this pragmatic schedule inadvertently created an optimal fasting period before sleep that modern research suggests enhances melatonin production and improves sleep quality. Consider Halfdan, a farmer from the Trondheim region. Archaeological evidence from similar farmsteads suggests his household would consume their final meal around 4 to 5 p.m. during winter months, allowing 3 to 4 hours of digestion time before retiring, as darkness deepened around 8 to 9 p.m. This natural interval between eating and sleeping would have allowed his digestive processes to substantially complete before sleep began, preventing the sleep disruptions associated with active digestion during the early sleep phases. Analysis of archaeological remains, including food residues, middens, refuse heaps, and human remains with isotope analysis, provides detailed information about the Viking diet. This evidence reveals several aspects of Norse nutrition that likely supported healthy sleep. High protein content. Archaeological evidence shows that the Viking diet was relatively high in protein from both animal and plant sources. Protein-rich foods contain significant amounts of tryptophan, an amino acid that serves as a precursor to serotonin and melatonin, both crucial neurochemicals for healthy sleep. Modern research has shown that adequate dietary protein, particularly when consumed earlier in the day rather than immediately before sleep, supports optimal sleep architecture. Omega-3 fatty acids. Isotope analysis of Viking remains consistently shows high levels of marine-derived nutrients, confirming the importance of fish in the Norse diet. Fatty fish, which archaeological evidence shows were dietary staples in many Viking communities, are rich in omega-3 fatty acids. Modern research has demonstrated a strong correlation between omega-3 consumption and improved sleep quality, with studies showing that higher blood levels of DHA, a type of omega-3, are associated with better sleep. Complex carbohydrates. Archaeological evidence, including carbonized grain remains and grinding tools, shows that barley, rye, and oats were staples of the Viking diet. These whole grains provide complex carbohydrates that modern research has linked to improved sleep quality. Studies have shown that high glycemic carbohydrates consumed close to bedtime can reduce sleep latency. While the complex carbohydrates typical of the Viking diet, consumed earlier in the day, provide sustained energy without the sleep-disrupting blood sugar fluctuations associated with simple carbohydrates. Limited refined sugar. The Viking diet was notably low in simple sugars, with honey being the primary sweetener, and used sparingly due to its value. Modern research has demonstrated that high sugar consumption, particularly close to bedtime, can significantly disrupt sleep architecture by causing blood sugar fluctuations throughout the night. Fermented foods. Archaeological evidence shows that fermented foods, including ska ayar, a yogurt-like dairy product, fermented fish, and various preserved vegetables, were important components of the Viking diet. These foods support gut health, which emerging research suggests plays a crucial role in sleep quality through the gut-brain axis and the production of sleep-regulating neurotransmitters. Several specific foods common in the Viking diet have been identified by modern research as particularly beneficial for sleep. Fatty fish. Archaeological evidence from coastal Viking settlements shows heavy consumption of fatty fish like herring, mackerel, and salmon. These fish are exceptionally rich in vitamin D and omega-3 fatty acids, both of which have been linked to improve sleep quality in multiple studies. Research published in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine found that vitamin D supplementation significantly improves sleep quality, suggesting that the Viking diet's natural vitamin D content from fatty fish would have supported healthy sleep. Oats. Carbonized grain remains from numerous Viking settlements confirm the importance of oats in the Norse diet. Oats contain melatonin and complex carbohydrates that promote stable blood sugar throughout the night. They also provide magnesium, which modern research has identified as an important mineral for sleep quality due to its muscle-relaxing properties and role in GABA production. Barley. Archaeological evidence shows barley was the most important grain in many Viking communities. Barley is rich in the amino acid tryptophan and contains significant amounts of magnesium and B vitamins, all nutrients. Modern research has linked to improved sleep quality. Dairy products. Analysis of residues in Viking cooking vessels confirms the importance of dairy in the Norse diet. Milk, particularly when fermented into products like skyr, contains calcium, tryptophan, and vitamin D, a combination of nutrients that support the production of melatonin. Modern research has shown that dairy consumption can improve sleep efficiency and increase REM sleep. Archaeological evidence shows that fermentation and other preservation methods were crucial to Viking food culture. These techniques not only extended food storage life, but inadvertently created products with enhanced sleep-promoting properties. Fermented fish. Analysis of residues from Viking food vessels confirms the practice of fermenting fish. This process increases the bioavailability of the omega-3 fatty acids that modern research has linked to improved sleep quality. Skyr and fermented dairy. Residue analysis confirms the production of fermented dairy products. The fermentation process increases the GABA content of dairy, a neurotransmitter with powerful sleep-promoting effects. Modern research has shown that GABA-rich fermented foods can reduce sleep latency and improve sleep quality. Sourdough bread. Archaeological evidence, including preserved starters and bread remains, confirms that Vikings typically fermented their grain products through sourdough processes. This fermentation reduces the phytic acid content of grains, increasing the bioavailability of sleep-promoting minerals like magnesium and zinc. The Viking diet showed significant seasonal variations that likely impacted sleep patterns throughout the year. Archaeological evidence from middens shows clear seasonal patterns in food consumption that would have affected sleep. Winter diet. During winter months, preserved foods dominated the Viking diet. These included dried and fermented fish, smoked meats and stored grains, all foods that modern research has shown contain higher levels of certain sleep-promoting compounds compared to their fresh counterparts. For example, the fermentation and curing processes increase the availability of tryptophan in many foods. Summer diet. Archaeological evidence shows that summer diets included more fresh vegetables, fruits and dairy. These foods are rich in antioxidants and minerals that support melatonin production. The natural synchronization of diet with seasonal light changes may have helped Vikings maintain healthy sleep despite the dramatic seasonal variations in daylight at northern latitudes. Analysis of Viking drinking vessels and well constructions confirms the importance of adequate hydration in Norse culture. Water, ale, with lower alcohol content than modern beer, and whey-based drinks appear to have been the primary beverages. modern sleep research has established that proper hydration is crucial for quality sleep, while dehydration can fragment sleep and increase awakening frequency. The Viking practice of consuming moderate amounts of liquid throughout the day, rather than large amounts close to bedtime, which can cause nighttime awakening for urination, aligns with modern recommendations for sleep-supporting hydration patterns. Archaeological and literary evidence confirms that alcohol, primarily in the form of ale and mead, was consumed in Viking culture, often in substantial quantities during feasts and celebrations. However, several factors suggest that routine alcohol consumption may have been more moderate and less disruptive to sleep than in many modern contexts. Lower alcohol content, analysis of residues from Viking brewing vessels suggests their everyday ale had significantly lower alcohol content, typically 2 to 3%, than modern beer. Modern research has shown that while high alcohol consumption severely disrupts sleep architecture, particularly REM sleep, low to moderate consumption has less significant impacts. Timing of consumption. The saga suggests that heavy drinking typically occurred during special feasts rather than as a daily practice, and usually earlier in the day rather than immediately before sleep. This pattern would have minimized alcohol's disruptive effects on sleep architecture. Medicinal use. Some saga references suggest awareness that small amounts of alcohol could promote initial sleep onset, with mead sometimes mentioned as a sleep aid. Modern research confirms that while alcohol disrupts overall sleep architecture, small amounts can indeed reduce sleep latency. The dietary patterns that likely supported Viking sleep quality began to change in the centuries following the Viking Age. The introduction of refined sugar, increased alcohol content in beverages, later mealtimes, and eventually highly processed foods all represented departures from the sleep-supporting nutritional patterns of the Viking era. By the Industrial Revolution, many Europeans were consuming their largest meal in the evening, often close to bedtime, a significant change from the Viking pattern of eating the final meal well before sunset. This shift, driven by work schedules rather than natural light cycles, likely had substantial negative impacts on sleep quality. The archaeological and literary evidence suggests that the Viking diet, through both its composition and timing, created near-optimal conditions for quality sleep. Their consumption of foods rich in sleep-promoting nutrients, combined with meal timing that allowed complete digestion before sleep, likely contributed significantly to sleep quality. Superior to that experienced by many modern humans, whose diets and eating patterns often actively undermine healthy sleep. The relationship between physical activity and sleep quality is well established in modern sleep science, with moderate to vigorous daily exertion consistently linked to improved sleep architecture. Archaeological evidence, saga accounts, and our understanding of daily life in the Viking Age suggest that Norse physical activity patterns may have created ideal conditions for deep, restorative sleep, conditions increasingly rare in our sedentary modern world. Archaeological evidence provides clear insights into the physical nature of Viking existence. Analysis of skeletal remains shows distinctive muscle attachment patterns and bone density consistent with regular, intense physical activity. These skeletal markers vary by gender and social status, but universally indicate higher activity levels than modern populations. Examination of male Viking skeletons frequently shows asymmetrical development of arm and shoulder muscles, consistent with regular rowing, a physically demanding activity central to Norse maritime culture. Female skeletons often show distinctive muscle attachments associated with grain grinding, textile production, and other physically demanding domestic activities. Even high-status Vikings show skeletal indicators of regular physical activity. The remains of individuals buried with wealthy grave goods still display bone density and muscle attachment sites indicative of regular exertion, suggesting that physical activity was universal across Viking society rather than limited to labourers. The daily energy expenditure of Vikings would have far exceeded modern levels. Based on archaeological evidence and experimental archaeology, where researchers attempt to recreate historical activities. Estimates suggest that Viking farmers, craftspeople, and warriors regularly expended 3,000 to 4,000 calories daily through physical activity. Compared to the 300 to 600 calories the average modern office worker expends through physical activity. The specific types of physical exertion common in Viking daily life align remarkably well with activities modern sleep science identifies as particularly beneficial for sleep quality. Resistance activities. Archaeological evidence shows that Vikings regularly engaged in what we would now call resistance training, lifting, carrying, and manipulating heavy objects as part of daily work. Modern research has found that resistance exercise significantly improves sleep quality, particularly deep slow-wave sleep, which is crucial for physical restoration. The construction of Viking longhouses, ships, and fortifications required substantial strength. Experimental archaeology projects, where modern researchers attempt to build Viking structures using period-appropriate techniques, have demonstrated the extraordinary physical demands of these activities. One such project found that moving the heavy timbers for a modest longhouse required efforts comparable to modern strength training sessions. Aerobic activities. Archaeological evidence and saga accounts confirm that Vikings regularly engaged in sustained aerobic activities, including rowing, marching, and agricultural labour. Modern sleep research has consistently found that aerobic exercise is one of the most effective non-pharmaceutical interventions for improving sleep quality, particularly when performed regularly but not immediately before bedtime. The Viking practice of rowing as primary transportation represents a particularly effective form of sleep-promoting exercise. Modern research has identified rowing as an excellent combination of aerobic and resistance training that engages multiple muscle groups, precisely the type of exercise most strongly correlated with improved slow-wave sleep in contemporary studies. Outdoor activity and natural light exposure. Archaeological and literary evidence confirms that most Viking activity occurred outdoors, regardless of weather. This outdoor exertion would have ensured substantial exposure to natural light, which modern research has identified as crucial for regulating circadian rhythms and sleep-wake cycles. Studies published in the Journal of Sleep Research have found that outdoor exercise has more powerful effects on sleep quality than equivalent indoor activity, likely due to the combined benefits of physical exertion and natural light exposure. The Viking lifestyle, with its emphasis on outdoor work, would have maximised these combined benefits. Archaeological evidence and saga accounts suggest that Viking physical activity patterns aligned naturally with circadian rhythms in ways that would have optimized sleep quality, morning and daytime exertion. The sagas frequently mention beginning work at dawn, with the most physically demanding tasks typically performed during daylight hours. Modern sleep research has found that morning and afternoon exercise most effectively enhances sleep quality, while intense evening activity can delay sleep onset. Seasonal adaptation. Archaeological evidence suggests that work patterns shifted seasonally, with more intense physical activity during the extended daylight of summer and reduced, though still substantial, exertion during winter months. This natural seasonal variation would have helped maintain consistent sleep quality, despite dramatic seasonal changes in daylight hours at northern latitudes. Gradual evening reduction. The saga literature suggests that evening activities typically involved less physically demanding tasks, such as storytelling, handicrafts, and meal preparation. This natural tapering of physical exertion in the hours before sleep aligns perfectly with modern recommendations for optimizing sleep onset. Consider Gunnar, a shipbuilder from coastal Norway. Archaeological evidence from similar contexts suggests his typical day would involve intense physical labour from dawn until late afternoon, rowing to obtain materials, lifting and shaping heavy timbers, and operating manual tools. As evening approached, his activities would naturally transition to less demanding tasks like fine carving or planning the next day's work. This pattern, intense physical exertion during daylight hours, followed by gradually reduced activity before sleep, creates ideal conditions for deep, restorative sleep, according to modern research. While the Vikings engaged in substantial daily physical activity, archaeological and literary evidence suggests they also recognized the importance of rest and recovery, creating a balanced approach to exertion that would have supported optimal sleep. Seasonal rest periods. The saga literature references Jolavild, Yule rest, a period during the darkest winter months when physical labour was reduced and rest was emphasised. Modern research has found that periodic deloading phases are crucial for preventing the sleep disruptions associated with overtraining. Bathing and recovery practices. Archaeological evidence, including the remains of bathhouses at several Viking settlements, confirms the importance of bathing in Norse culture. The sagas mention hot baths as a recovery technique, particularly after travel or physical exertion. Modern research has identified warm bathing, especially 1 to 2 hours before bedtime, as an effective way to improve sleep quality by facilitating the natural drop in core body temperature that signals the body to sleep. Awareness of fatigue. The saga literature suggests a cultural awareness of the importance of adequate rest. The Havamal advises moderation in all things, including work, and contains wisdom that could be interpreted as recognizing the importance of sufficient recovery. Cattle die, kindred die, every man is mortal, but the good name never dies of one who has done well. This suggests a long-term perspective that would support sustainable work patterns rather than constant exhaustion. Archaeological and literary evidence suggests that much Viking physical work was performed communally, often accompanied by songs, stories, or competitive elements. Modern research has found that social exercise has particularly powerful benefits for sleep quality compared to solitary exertion. Studies published in sleep medicine reviews have found that the combination of social interaction and physical activity creates a particularly effective stimulus for improving sleep quality, likely due to the combined effects of physical fatigue and positive social engagement. The communal nature of Viking work, from rowing ships to raising buildings, would have maximised these combined benefits. The Viking pattern of substantial daily physical exertion, performed primarily during daylight hours, contrasts sharply with modern activity patterns. Today, many people engage in minimal physical activity throughout the day, exercise intensely in the evening, if at all, perform physical activity indoors under artificial light, experience little seasonal variation in activity levels. Each of these modern patterns represents a departure from the activity patterns that supported Viking sleep quality. The shift from consistent daily physical exertion to sedentary lifestyles punctuated by occasional intense exercise represents one of the most significant changes in human sleep hygiene over the past millennium. Modern research suggests that the Viking pattern of consistent, substantial daily physical activity, performed primarily during daylight hours, creates ideal conditions for deep, restorative sleep, particularly the crucial slow-wave sleep phases during which physical recovery occurs. An important distinction between Viking and modern fatigue patterns lies in the balance between physical and mental exhaustion. Archaeological and literary evidence suggests that Viking daily life involved substantial physical exertion, but relatively limited cognitive stress compared to modern, information-saturated environments. Modern sleep research has found that physical fatigue generally enhances sleep quality, while mental, cognitive fatigue and stress often undermine it. The Viking balance of high physical demands with lower cognitive stress represents a particularly sleep-friendly combination, according to contemporary sleep science. The archaeological and literary evidence suggests that Viking physical activity patterns, characterized by substantial daily exertion, performed primarily during daylight hours, with natural seasonal variations and appropriate recovery periods, created near-optimal conditions for quality sleep. Their combination of resistance and aerobic activities, performed outdoors and often socially, would have provided powerful sleep-enhancing benefits that many modern humans, despite our advanced knowledge of exercise physiology, fail to achieve in our sedentary, artificially lit environments. Beyond the physical and environmental factors that contributed to Viking sleep quality, archaeological evidence and saga literature suggest that Norse psychological approaches to sleep may have been equally important. Their cultural attitudes toward rest, their methods of managing anxiety, and their spiritual beliefs about sleep created mental conditions conducive to the deep, restorative sleep that modern humans often find elusive. The saga literature reveals a Norse culture that valued proper rest without fetishizing sleep or developing anxiety about it, a balanced approach that modern sleep psychology recognizes as optimal for sleep quality. The Havamal, a collection of Old Norse poems from the Poetic Edda, contains several verses that could be interpreted as addressing the importance of moderation in sleep. A man should not sleep all the morning through. He who grasps at wealth is often without wisdom. This suggests a cultural value placed on rising with purpose, while other verses warn against excessive vigilance and worry. The unwise man is awake all night and ponders everything over. When morning comes, he is weary in mind, and all is a burden as ever. These complementary perspectives suggest a balanced approach that valued adequate sleep without excessive concern about it. Precisely the attitude that modern sleep psychologists recommend for optimal sleep quality. The Norse cultural approach appears to have treated sleep as a natural, necessary part of life, rather than either a luxury to be minimized or a problem to be solved. This balanced attitude contrasts sharply with both medieval Christian ascetic traditions that sometimes viewed sleep reduction as spiritually virtuous, and our modern productivity-obsessed culture that often treats sleep as an inefficiency to be minimized. The Viking approach, valuing adequate rest while maintaining clear purpose, represents a psychological middle path that modern sleep psychology recognizes as most conducive to healthy sleep. Archaeological evidence and saga accounts confirm the importance of evening storytelling in Norse culture. The physical evidence includes the arrangement of seating around central hearths in longhouses, creating natural storytelling spaces, while the literary evidence includes numerous references to evening saga telling as a common activity. Modern sleep psychology has identified the importance of cognitive decompression before sleep, transitional activities that help the mind shift from active problem solving to the relaxed state conducive to sleep onset. The Viking practice of evening storytelling would have served this function perfectly, providing entertainment while allowing listeners to mentally disengage from the concerns of the day. Research published in Sleep Medicine has found that pre-sleep activities involving passive engagement, like listening to stories, improve sleep onset and quality compared to problem-solving activities or exposure to interactive media. The Viking tradition of oral storytelling in the evening hours represents an ideal pre-sleep cognitive activity according to modern sleep science. Consider Astrid, a woman from a farmstead near what is now Uppsala, Sweden. Archaeological evidence from similar households suggests that after the evening meal, her family would gather around the hearth, where an elder might recount tales of ancestors or mythological stories. This passive listening experience would have allowed her mind to gradually transition from the active concerns of the day to a more receptive, relaxed state ideal for sleep onset, all without the blue light exposure or interactive stimulation that undermines sleep in modern evening entertainment. Archaeological evidence, including amulets and carved symbols found near sleeping areas, combined with literary references in the sagas and Eddas, suggest that Vikings held complex spiritual beliefs about sleep and dreaming that likely influenced their sleep experience. The Norse cosmology included significant attention to dreams as potential sources of wisdom or prophecy. In numerous sagas, including Gisla Saga and Laxdæla Saga, dreams are portrayed as meaningful experiences that provide guidance or warnings. This perspective contrasts with some later Christian views that sometimes associated dreams with demonic influence, a belief that could generate sleep anxiety. The Norse view of dreams as potentially valuable experiences rather than threats may have reduced sleep anxiety, and created a more positive psychological approach to sleep. Modern sleep psychology has found that positive attitudes toward dreaming are associated with better sleep quality, while fear of dreams can contribute to insomnia and sleep avoidance. Additionally, archaeological evidence suggests that Vikings sometimes placed protective amulets near sleeping areas. These physical manifestations of spiritual protection likely provided psychological comfort that facilitated sleep onset. Modern sleep research has confirmed that perceived safety is a crucial psychological prerequisite for quality sleep, activating parasympathetic nervous system responses that facilitate sleep onset and maintenance. The saga literature suggests that Norse culture developed specific psychological approaches to uncertainty and worry, approaches that would have supported healthy sleep in a world full of genuine dangers and unpredictability. The concept of weird, or uærdiar fate, appears repeatedly in Norse literature, suggesting a worldview that acknowledged the limits of personal control over outcomes. While Vikings certainly took practical actions to manage risks, the literary evidence suggests they complemented this with a philosophical acceptance of uncertainty that modern psychology would recognise as beneficial for sleep. Research in sleep psychology has consistently found that acceptance-based approaches to uncertainty reduce pre-sleep anxiety and rumination more effectively than problem-solving approaches when applied to uncertainties that cannot be immediately resolved. The Viking cultural emphasis on acknowledging the role of fate alongside personal action represents a sophisticated psychological balance that would have supported healthy sleep even in challenging circumstances. The Havamal contains wisdom that could be interpreted as advocating this balanced approach. The coward believes he will live forever if he holds back in the battle. But in old age he shall have no peace, though spears have spared his limbs. This suggests a cultural recognition that excessive worry about future outcomes is ultimately counterproductive, a perspective that aligns with modern psychological approaches to managing pre-sleep anxiety. The saga literature places enormous emphasis on honour and maintaining a clear conscience, psychological factors that modern sleep research has linked to sleep quality. Numerous psychological studies have found that moral distress and guilt significantly impair sleep quality, while a sense of moral consistency supports healthy sleep. The Viking cultural emphasis on maintaining honour and addressing conflicts directly, rather than through deception, would have supported this aspect of sleep hygiene. The sagas contain numerous examples where characters are unable to sleep due to unresolved moral issues or dishonourable actions. In Gisla Saga, the protagonist experiences severe sleep disturbances after a secret killing, suggesting a cultural recognition of the connection between moral peace and sleep quality. This emphasis on moral clarity as a prerequisite for restful sleep aligns with modern psychological research on moral injury and its impact on sleep. Studies of individuals with PTSD and moral injury have found that moral distress specifically disrupts REM sleep and increases nightmares, suggesting that the Viking cultural emphasis on maintaining honour may have supported healthier sleep architecture. Archaeological evidence of Viking settlement patterns and defensive structures, combined with the communal sleeping arrangements discussed earlier, suggests an approach to security that would have supported healthy sleep psychology. Modern sleep research has identified perceived safety as a fundamental prerequisite for quality sleep. The brain's vigilance system must determine that an environment is secure before allowing the vulnerability of deep sleep. The Viking approach to security, combining physical defences with communal sleeping arrangements where multiple individuals could respond to threats, created conditions of perceived safety that would have supported deeper, more restorative sleep. This contrasts with the often isolating sleeping arrangements of modern life, where individuals may feel solely responsible for responding to potential threats, a psychological burden that can maintain excessive vigilance during sleep periods and reduce sleep depth. Archaeological and literary evidence suggests that Vikings developed psychological adaptations to the extreme seasonal variations in their environment. particularly the challenge of the long winter darkness at northern latitudes. The timing of major feasts and celebrations, as evidenced by both archaeological remains of feast halls and saga references, shows a concentration of communal celebrations during the darkest winter period. Modern psychological research has found that anticipation of positive social experiences significantly reduces depression and anxiety, suggesting that the Viking cultural calendar may have been structured to provide psychological support during the challenging winter months. Additionally, the Norse concept of solvörf, sun turning or solstice, represented an important psychological framework for understanding the cyclical nature of dark periods. Archaeological evidence, including solstice markers at several sites, confirms the cultural importance of recognizing these astronomical turning points. Modern psychological research has found that framing difficult periods as temporary and cyclical significantly reduces their negative psychological impact, suggesting that the Viking cultural understanding of seasonal cycles may have provided important psychological resilience during the challenging winter darkness. The psychological approaches to sleep that characterized the Viking Age began to change with Christianization and subsequent cultural developments. The introduction of concepts like acedia, spiritual sloth, and religious practices involving intentional sleep disruption, such as the monastic practice of nocturnal prayers, represented significant departures from the more balanced Norse approach to sleep. By the late medieval period, new anxieties about sleep had emerged in European culture, including fears of spiritual dangers during sleep and increased moral scrutiny of dreams. These developments likely undermined the more straightforward, balanced psychological approach to sleep that characterized the Viking Age. The archaeological and literary evidence suggests that Viking psychological approaches to sleep, characterized by balanced attitudes toward rest, effective pre-sleep cognitive decompression through storytelling, positive spiritual associations with sleep and dreaming, pragmatic approaches to uncertainty, emphasis on moral clarity, and communal security, created near-optimal conditions for quality sleep. Their psychological framework supported healthy sleep in ways that many modern humans, despite our advanced understanding of sleep psychology, struggle to achieve in our anxiety-prone, hyper-connected world. The evidence presented throughout this exploration suggests a provocative conclusion. The people of Viking Age Scandinavia may indeed have experienced some of the best sleep in human history. Their sleep practices were not superior due to any single factor, but rather through the remarkable alignment of multiple elements: environmental, physical, nutritional, and psychological, that collectively created ideal conditions for restorative sleep. The Viking approach to sleep was not the result of advanced scientific understanding or deliberate optimization. Rather, it emerged organically from their way of life, their environmental conditions, and their cultural practices. Yet modern sleep science increasingly validates the effectiveness of these ancient patterns, suggesting that in our quest for better sleep, we might look not only forward to new technologies, but also backward to wisdom embedded in traditional practices. What made Viking sleep particularly effective was the integration of multiple sleep-supporting factors into a coherent whole. Their biphasic sleep patterns aligned naturally with human biology and the extended darkness of northern winters, allowing for sleep that followed innate circadian rhythms rather than artificial schedules. Their relationship with darkness, living without artificial light and experiencing true darkness during sleeping hours, supported optimal melatonin production and circadian regulation. Their communal sleeping arrangements provided both physical security and psychological comfort, creating conditions where vigilance could be reduced and deeper sleep achieved. Their sleeping surfaces, constructed from natural materials and regularly refreshed, offered ergonomic support and temperature regulation that many modern mattresses attempt to recreate with advanced technology. Their use of herbal sleep aids provided gentle, non-habit-forming support for sleep onset and quality, without the side effects associated with many modern sleep medications. Their dietary patterns, with meals timed well before sleep, and composed of nutrients that modern science recognizes as sleep supporting, created optimal conditions for digestive comfort during sleep. Their physical activity patterns, characterized by substantial daily exertion, performed primarily during daylight hours, created the kind of physical fatigue that promotes deep, restorative, slow-wave sleep. Their psychological approaches to sleep, balanced, accepting, and unburdened by sleep anxiety, created the mental conditions necessary for surrendering to sleep without the performance pressure that undermines many modern sleep attempts. This integration of multiple factors created a sleep ecosystem far more conducive to quality rest than our modern environment. Despite all our technological advances and scientific knowledge, the sleep-friendly practices of the Viking Age did not disappear overnight. Rather, they eroded gradually through a series of historical developments that each chipped away at different aspects of their effective sleep ecosystem. The spread of artificial lighting, beginning with improved candles and oil lamps and culminating in electric light, disrupted the darkness that had supported natural melatonin production. The Industrial Revolution imposed artificial work schedules disconnected from natural light cycles, forcing sleep into consolidated blocks determined by productivity requirements rather than biological rhythms. Architectural changes created increasingly private sleeping spaces, sacrificing the security and social connection of communal sleep for privacy and status display. The medicalization of sleep transformed a natural process into a performance metric, creating sleep anxiety that undermines the very rest it attempts to measure. The shift to sedentary lifestyles eliminated the physical fatigue that had naturally prepared bodies for deep sleep. Changes in dietary patterns introduced sleep-disrupting foods and meal timings that interfere with natural sleep processes. Each of these changes was embraced as progress, yet collectively they have created a modern sleep environment that works against our biology rather than with it, resulting in the sleep crisis that now affects societies worldwide. Reclaiming Viking sleep wisdom. While we cannot and should not attempt to recreate Viking society in its entirety, their sleep practices offer valuable insights that can be adapted to improve sleep in our modern context. Respect for darkness. Creating truly dark sleeping environments by eliminating LED lights, using blackout curtains, and avoiding screen use before bed can help restore some of the melatonin-supporting benefits that Vikings experience naturally. Biphasic flexibility. Recognizing that the 8-hour consolidated sleep block is a modern convention rather than a biological necessity can reduce sleep anxiety and open possibilities for more flexible, individually appropriate sleep patterns. Natural materials. Choosing bedding made from wool, cotton, and other natural fibers can help recreate some of the temperature-regulating benefits of traditional Viking bedding. Nutritional timing. Adopting earlier meal times and allowing several hours of digestion before sleep can recreate one of the most beneficial aspects of Viking sleep hygiene. Consistent physical activity. Incorporating regular physical exertion throughout the day, particularly outdoors in natural light, can help create the kind of physical fatigue that promotes deep sleep. Herbal support. Exploring traditional sleep-supporting herbs like valerian, hops, and chamomile can provide gentle sleep support without the side effects of many pharmaceutical interventions. Evening decompression. Replacing interactive electronic media with passive activities like storytelling or listening in the hours before bed can help recreate the cognitive transition that Viking evening activities naturally provided. Psychological balance. Cultivating a balanced attitude towards sleep, valuing it without anxiously monitoring it, can help recreate the psychological conditions that supported Viking sleep quality. These adaptations cannot fully recreate the integrated sleep ecosystem of the Viking Age, but they can help incorporate elements of their effective practices into our modern lives. Perhaps the most important lesson from Viking sleep practices is what might be called the Viking sleep paradox. Those who worried least about optimizing their sleep may have achieved the best sleep in history. Their sleep quality emerged not from deliberate optimization, but as a natural consequence of a lifestyle aligned with human biology and environmental conditions. This stands in stark contrast to our modern approach, where sleep is increasingly treated as a performance metric to be optimized through technology, supplements, and careful monitoring. The evidence suggests that this anxious attention to sleep optimization may actually undermine the very rest it attempts to improve. The Vikings remind us that the best sleep comes not from treating rest as a problem to be solved, but from creating the environmental, physical, and psychological conditions where healthy sleep emerges naturally. Their approach, living in harmony with natural cycles, maintaining physical activity, eating appropriately, and approaching sleep with balanced attitudes, created conditions where good sleep was the default rather than an achievement. In our quest for better sleep, perhaps the most valuable insight from the Viking Age is not any specific technique or practice, but this fundamental shift in perspective. Rather than trying to optimize sleep directly, we might focus on creating the conditions where healthy sleep patterns emerge naturally from our daily lives. The people of Viking Age Scandinavia likely experienced some of the best sleep in human history, not because they knew more about sleep than we do, but because they lived in ways that naturally supported the sleep processes our bodies evolved to require. By understanding their practices and the principles behind them, we can work to reclaim some of that lost sleep wisdom and apply it within our modern context, not by becoming Vikings, but by recognizing the timeless human needs their lifestyle inadvertently satisfied. As we navigate our modern sleep challenges, the Norse people of 1,000 years ago offer us not just historical curiosity, but practical wisdom. The best sleep comes not from conquering rest through force of will and technology, but from creating the conditions where healthy sleep naturally flourishes. In this, as in their legendary journeys, the Vikings have charted a path we would be wise to follow.